I was treated like a criminal at every stage, right? And I think that murderers would have had better access to their children.
We've got to that feminist place now where we think children only need mums. No, they don't. That's why our country's falling apart. That's why we're raising dysfunctional children.
But yeah, I had not seen him since he was 10. He's now 15 and a half.
I remember another female family member saying to her, the next time he calls to pick the kids up, put the kids in your room, answer the door, rip your blouse open and start screaming so the neighbours come out. And then you can say he tried to rape you. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest, first time on the channel, is a gentleman called James Jones, who's got a lot of information, a couple of stories. And I'm probably going to be speaking to him over several podcasts because these are the conversations we need to have. Our society isn't fair. It's never been fair, and it's never going to be fair. But we've been pushing and pushing for equality. We've been pushing and pushing to try to make it the fairest it possibly can be. But along that journey, white, straight men always seem to get the wrong end of the stick, always get the worst possible outcome. And when it comes to family courts, when it comes to adult men and women splitting up and they've got children, I've got lots of examples of people I know where the men always come out worse. There's lies, there's accusations. We've seen it with Johnny Depp. We've seen it with Johnny Depp, famous multi-millionaire actor, and his girlfriend was accusing him of domestic violence, and he caught it all on tape, and there was no domestic violence. But first of all, welcome, James, to the show.
Hello, Nick. How do you do?
Thanks for coming on. I know lots of men who walk away from their families, never see their kids, will complain, it's difficult, but don't really try. There is men like that. They exist. Of course they do. But I also know lots of men who spend years fighting to see their children. One of my family members is a family law solicitor, and they tell me stories all the time. The hoops these men have got to jump through, the loans they have to take out to keep fighting to get to see their children going into debt. And then I forget the suicide stats now, but there's a high number of men who kill themselves over the breakdown of relationship marriages and not seeing their children. I can't imagine anything worse than knowing my children live a couple of miles down the road or in a different city, and I'm not allowed to see my children. It's a punishment that I don't think anyone can appreciate until it happens to them.
Absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned the suicide rate. That kind of speaks for itself. I myself have been suicidal at several points in my journey over what is it now, 10 years or so. I haven't seen my son in 5 years. And let's be quite clear, I have done nothing wrong. No court has found me guilty of anything, and no fact-finding hearing even has ever taken place. These are allegations and nothing more. Okay. My own case, very sadly, was very closely embroiled with the tragic death of Archie Spriggs back in 2017. So that adds another layer of tragedy to my own case, and has has had a very wide consequence upon my family and many other families in my area of South Shropshire. But yes, thank you. You're absolutely right. The conditions for men such as myself, white, straight, reasonably middle class, just normal everyday, is virtually impossible.
So your relationship marriage broke down. You separated. She had your son. What happened then? Did she accuse you of violence? Did she accuse you of mistreatment? Did she disappear? I've spoken to men on this channel who have married foreign women and they've just gone back to their home country and basically kidnapped their child, and then they can't find them anymore in Poland, and it happens in Asia as well. What happened when your relationship broke down?
Well, indeed, my ex-wife is Polish. If we go back to early 2016, I think it's fair to say, we'd been married for several years up to that point. It wasn't without its good points. We, I thought we seemed to get on reasonably well. My wife was not perfect, and there were warning signs certainly. But as time went on, I think her sort of love and respect for me evaporated, as I seemed to try ever harder and harder to make the relationship work. Um, for my son's sake, essentially. Once you take the plunge into marriage, and especially when you have children, marriage is all about children, then that marriage needs to stay together for the good of the child, and that's the approach I took. Um, but like I said, as time went on, less and less respect, less and less warmth, until things sort of came to a head. Yes, we had some arguments. Now, uh, in the sort of realm of the social services or the family court, one argument is seen as too many. But I think we all know in the real world, happy families argue, normal people argue. This is not unusual. And when we'd maybe have an argument, maybe once every 4 to 6 months, often about money, trivial matters. But anyway, it sort of came to a head, and we split up. I'll hold my hand up. I was caught kind of flirting with another woman, um, and flirting is all it was. But by that point, I kind of took the opportunity to leave. Um, I of course regret that to an extent. Now, I didn't foresee the catastrophe my ex-wife would bring upon us. We split up, and at the time, it seemed like quite an amicable split. There was certainly talk of, yeah, just come, just turn up here whenever you want. She cooked, and she did for a time. She cooked me dinner, and I would take my son out to the park to play, and that sort of thing. But then I think what really changed things was the interference of other women in the in the um, in the community. We're talking about a village called Rushbury, Wall under Hayward, very small, very very small, an idyllic area in the Shropshire Hills. Um, but a lot of bored women, a lot of time on their hands, and tittle tattle and schoolgate gossip can take over. And it was at that point really where a local character got involved. I'd simply taken my son out. Me and my mother took my son out for a picnic. Returned him as arranged on time to be met by this character who grabbed my son, dragged him away, made him drop his toys, made him cry, dragged him into the kind of porch of my ex-wife's house, started shouting, saying she was calling the police for no apparent reason. Okay, that the hysteria was palpable. And then soon after, the uh, the allegations came, all false. Ex parte non molestation order. I'm sure a lot of men in the family courts uh, with family court experience will know what that's all about. But then it just fell apart from there, basically, in early 2016.
Right. So interference from other women, and I've seen that myself. I remember being in my very early teens, relationship, one of my auntie's relationships, married relationship breaks down. And I remember another female I'm not, obviously I'm like you, I'm not naming people. I remember another female family member saying to her, the next time he calls to pick the kids up, put the kids in the other room, answer the door, rip your blouse open and start screaming so the neighbors come out. And then you can say he tried to rape you. And I'm like a 12, 13-year-old boy going, he's, I didn't say anything. I was in shock. I was like, what? This is going to be me. I'm going to be the man knocking on my ex-wife's door to pick up children, probably. And women are telling other women to fake attempted rape. And these are two women I loved and still love now. But so women can be this evil, this manipulative. But the whole court system, the whole criminal justice system is set up like this. You know, a couple of decades ago, all we ever heard about was domestic violence, domestic violence, domestic violence. And then you look at the stats and you realize domestic violence hardly happens in the UK. It's almost non-existent today. So they changed the name to domestic abuse. And domestic abuse now includes anything. It includes having an argument. It includes criticizing what your wife's wearing. Anything can be deemed abuse because these domestic violence charities that are run by women never wanted to close down. So they created new problems to carry on this feminist myth that men are evil, that men persecute women, and then that men, beat up women. And there is a tiny, tiny handful of men who do physically attack women, but it's less than 1%.
No, of course, of course. I mean, I'm reminded of the domestic violence epidemic of the COVID outbreak. I mean, this was a myth cultivated by a feminist lobby in order to exert even more pressure on our society and especially on family courts. Domestic abuse is anything. It can be the way you look at someone can be domestic abuse. Now that there is so we've always known that some women, some sort of lower quality women that are sort of prone to sort of hysteria, for want of a better word. I've very recently come across the work of Dr. Danny Sulikovsky, an Australian psychologist, I think, who only recently saw an interview with her. The underlying causes for this. Why do women do this? Why do they embark upon this sort of collective hysteria or the kind of social contagions? It's sort of to just. I mean, I'm a psychologist, but and I think anyone should go and look at her work. But women sabotage each other all the time, and clearly in your case, that bit of poor advice was not in the other woman's interest. It certainly wasn't in your interest. It was some sort of social contagion that sought to sabotage the other party, and that's what I've seen time and time again. I have struggled long and hard to come up for a reason why some women embark on this, and I've seen it firsthand, and it's always been there to an extent, but I think that the way that it's got into our institutions now is very, very dangerous. It's led to, as far as I'm concerned, avoidable deaths of children, and certainly the avoidable sort of destruction of childhoods, as my own son has found out to his cost.
Yeah, let's get back to your son. So what's been stopping you seeing him over the last 5 years?
Well, for most of that 5 years, he was in care. Now, why was he in care? That would be a very, very good question. It's not something I can easily answer because I don't fully understand it myself. This has not been, but this is not. We've gone through court many, many times. It's been discussed time and time again, but there is nothing There is nothing.
Were you offered custody?
I had a shared parenting arrangement in 2019. After several years, I've already been several years of private law action. Essentially, my ex-wife attacking me and trying to rid herself of me uh, and have a son to herself. The Archie Spriggs case loomed large. Okay, so Archie Spriggs was murdered by his mother, savagely murdered, back in 2017. So Archie Spriggs was my son's best friend at school, and his mother, Leslie Speed, also happened to be my ex-wife's best friend. So they, along with other women, had formed a cabal, a coven, you may say. Um, and okay, so we had several years of sort of madness, but finally I got the court to see sense, and they awarded me shared parenting during 2019. So this is about 3 nights a week on average holiday. So let's say almost half and half. What a joyous time that was, right? 2019, fantastic. I can show you so many photos. We went all over. We did everything. Okay. But even though by that time Archie had been murdered, and even though that the warnings that had been made to my ex-wife about my son being taken into care, you must ameliorate your behavior, you must start being reasonable, you must start sort of dealing with me on a reasonable, constructive basis. It's simply fell on deaf ears. You know, every sort of opportunity to make a problem was taken by my ex-wife. It sort of came to a head, I suppose, when my son told me, in no uncertain terms, "Mummy has told me to say bad things about Daddy because it makes her happy." Now, having heard this, it's not something I ever wanted to delve into with it. Wanted to just leave it alone and just build a normal relationship. But having heard this and other things, and I thought, well, I've got to sort of approach someone and tell them. Social services didn't seem particularly responsive. I went to see the head teacher at Rushbury School, and my son repeated this to her. In time, this sort of got distorted, distorted until it was reversed. And I was the problem for highlighting this, but for bringing it to their attention. I'm causing trouble. Okay. If anyone watches the Matthew Spriggs's video, they will see some parallels there. On the very day, the local coroner, John Ellery, the Shropshire coroner, made the recommendation in the inquest of Archie's death. He made the recommendation that more such children should be taken into care at an earlier stage, essentially. So on the very day that was made, the local authority applied to take my son into care. The reason given, there was only ever one reason given as far as I'm concerned. My son had said he was scared of both me and his mother.
Right.
Dubious at best, given my relationship with him, given his love for his mother even as well. Let's not forget that. And then he was taken into care, and I was, kind of fought this at every opportunity, of course. And I got to see my son once every few weeks in a very, I was treated like a criminal at every stage, right? And I think that murderers would have had better access to their children. But I had some contact with my son, and it was always very good. However, the one day in contact, we were kind of playing soldiers, right? We played army as we always did, and he was getting me to he was shouting at me, like he was the sergeant major, and he was getting me to march around. And quite I didn't stand up quite straight enough, so he punched me in the stomach. No, no harm. He didn't mean any. This is play, right? Rough and any any self-respecting father will see this as normal, innocent play. The woman, the supervisor there, was a particularly sort of well, you'd know the type if you saw her, let's say. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
She had taken me to one side and said, "Oh, it's not appropriate," and blah blah blah. You know, appropriate has become my least favorite word. But later, I was forced to sign a document which essentially stopped me from playing with him and touching him, from even asking him what he did. And I didn't sign, so that was that. You can't see your son anymore. That was 5 years ago. Okay, so he's since gone back to his mother, my ex-wife, roughly 6 or 8 months ago. But yeah, I had not seen him since he was 10. He's now 15 and a half. That's a great deal.
That's absolutely shocking. I mean, I spent decades working with social workers. People think social work is about helping and protecting vulnerable adults and children. It's not. The number one priority of a social worker is to make sure when someone dies, the council can't be blamed for it. That's the number one priority of the social worker. Hence why they took your child, because the other child had died and we were getting bad publicity across the nation. So it's like, we can't afford a second child dying. Just take them. So it was never about the child. It was about the reputation of the council. That's why most social workers don't last long as social workers. They go into the job thinking it's about helping people and then soon realize it's got nothing to do with helping people. It's about helping the council bosses stay out of the press. So that's 5.5 years ago. He's 15 and a half now. There's only 2.5 years to go before he's 18. And then he can make decisions himself. Is that what you're waiting for now?
Essentially, yes. But let's not kid myself. My son's been subject to a systematic alienation, not only his mother but by the state. I have no doubt that foster carers engaged in a system of alienation. Now, for those who don't know, I mean, parental alienation is something of a buzzword. I will accept. And of course, by the feminist lobby, it's seen as something that men just accuse women of. And maybe they do, but not without good cause. Okay, this happens. It's a real phenomenon. I've seen it. So my son, I have to be careful because I don't really know what he said. I don't really know what he thinks. I'm only told what he thinks by the social services. So there's a filter there. So I don't know this, but I am told that he is utterly terrified of me. That when he was in foster care, he rarely went out. He wouldn't of his room. He wouldn't go out on a bicycle on his own, for example. And again, this was in a very, very beautiful part of the wilderness, Shropshire Hills, plenty of outdoor space for him to go in. But he would not. He was terrified of he might see me. As far as I'm aware, he never actually did. But nevertheless, he claimed he did, and then he was given days off school for the stress of having seen me. He was worried that I would break into the house and sort of ransack the place. I mean, these are exactly the same sort of allegations my ex-wife was making years before. The social services are not interested in addressing this. Okay, I don't think whatever the mechanism of the alienation, whoever was doing it, and it's not entirely clear, it did happen. But by pretending it did, by pretending, oh yeah, I'm obviously the problem, it works to it fits their narrative, all right? Exactly the same narrative as Archie's father was fitted into. And I think you understand the situation very well, Nick, when you talk about what the responsibilities of the social services are. You actually it's to cover things up. Okay, my son's not the only child to be taken into care in the wake of this. Okay, his other best friend was also taken into care. Another family was all, another mother who was also part of this cabal, also banding about these ridiculous allegations, the kind of domestic abuse, the coercive control, whatever that means, the financial abuse. Like, well, how do you disprove these? Right? There are several families destroyed by this, by a combination of this sort of feminist hysteria and by the state upholding and encouraging it. In my
Yeah, and to a certain extent rewarding it,
yes,
because then you then seem like you've won. I've got the best of my ex-husband. I've got sole custody of my child. My friends are telling me my ex-husband's trying to take advantage of me. I need to be stronger. I've heard these. I was raised with a family of only women. I was the only male in the household. I've heard these conversations. I've worked with men on the streets, rough sleepers on the streets, who tell me the same conversations about how they don't see their children, why they're living on the streets now, the breakdown, no support. They were perceived to be the problem. And then going back to your son, he's had years and years of people planting false memories in his mind, and he will blame you because he needs to find a reason why all these things happened, and everyone has been telling him it's you. He'll see things from a film 7 years ago, and in his mind now he's twisted it that film was actually real. That was you in that film, and you did those things. And his mum constantly saying bad things about you. These things stick in children's minds, and then they warp it, and suddenly they convince themselves it really happened like that. So he might be afraid of you, but what happens is when they're older, in their late teens, early 20s, something changes within children, and it's like, I need to find my other half of my biological parents. It's because I won't know who I am until I find out who they are. So it's about staying strong and waiting for that knock on the door, and making sure you're on social media, because that these days, that's where the first approach, the first checking who you are out will be. He'll be Googling your name, trying to find you on social media, never letting you know he's doing it, but trying to find out some information, eventually building up courage and making contact with you. James, I think that's a fantastic, not fantastic, that's the wrong word. That's a horrendous story. And there's hundreds of thousands of men in your position across the UK. No help, no support, easy to demonize them. And every time we demonize a father, we damage their children. Children need mothers and fathers. They're both equal. They both bring different things to the raising of children. A child, a boy and a girl, need a father and a mother. One can't compensate for the other. And that's what we need to remember. We're damaging our children as a nation, because we've got to that feminist place now where we think children only need mums. No, they don't. That's why our country's falling apart. That's why we're raising dysfunctional children, because we've started over decades now. We've got less fathers in the home, and that damages children. Last words from you, James.
no, you're absolutely right there. Yeah, I mean, from my own perspective, waiting and moving on and all this sort of thing. Well, look, I've tried my best to do that, but once you're a father, you don't go back. Always a father. Um, you know, that's the best any man can ever be, a father. And so I live with this nightmare every day. I don't wish to paint myself as the victim. My son is the victim,
Absolutely.
and I'm an adult, but he is not. There are other victims, as you said.
Exactly. Your son is the victim in this case because he's a child and he had no agency. He had no decisions. No one asked him what he wanted, really. They convinced him what he wanted. He's the victim in this because he's lost his father in the most crucial years of his life as a young teenage boy. That's when you need a father. That's when you find out how it is to be a man, what a man is, what you need to do. And we've got too many young men in our country who've been over feminized because all they've ever had in their lives are women, women at school, women at home. And it's not the way to raise the next generation of young men. James, there's so much more I want to ask you. Please come back on the channel and we'll dig into different parts of this story. And people need to understand this and people need to hear these stories. But thank you so much for discussing such an horrendous story. And thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick. I'll be seeing you soon.